Welcome, Diana, Patrick. So great to see you here. I think I saw Loida join as well. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you back here for our second session today and with our very special guest from the film Through the Night. We had an action-packed morning. Let's get into our second session. So this session is behind the scenes of a national film impact campaign with special guests of the award-winning impactful documentary film Through the Night. I'm just going to introduce our guests and make sure that you can hear them and see them. If you're joining us, tell me in the chat, can you hear us? Can you see us? Or give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So first, I will introduce Loida Limbal. She is an Afro-Dominican filmmaker and DJ interested in the creation of art that is nuanced and revelatory for communities of color. She's the Senior Vice President of Programs at Firelight Media, and she's the director-producer of Through the Night, a feature documentary film about a 24-hour daycare center. I am so honored to welcome you here today, Loida. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to say hi?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you all. Thank you for having us, Fanny.
Thank you. So next, I will introduce Diana Limanji. Diana is the campaign director of early learning at momsrising.org, a blogger and activist, podcaster, and Latina mom from New York City. Her podcast, Parenting and Politics, seeks to inform, inspire, and empower parents to take action and make a difference. Diana partnered with Through the Night as part of Moms Rising, a national organization that takes on the most critical issues facing women, mothers, families by educating the public and mobilizing massive grassroots action. Thank you for joining us today. Diana, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited. I'm a huge Loida fan and Nunu and Patrick fan. So I'm super excited to be here. And I also had the pleasure of having them on the podcast too. So they've been everywhere.
Nice, love it. And we are big fans of you, Diana. And then last but not least, I have to say I did say the best for last for this one. Dolores Nunu Hogan and Patrick Pop Hogan. So great to have you both here. What a treat. Founded These Tots in New Rochelle, New York in 1985 with the mission to enrich the children they serve one day at a time through individual and group play, interactive learning, and to provide a safe home away from home. Most of the constituents are single parents, low-income families. They provide a unique service, 24 hours a day childcare for families for whom childcare options are limited. The care that they provide is essential to the empowerment of the kids they serve and brings peace of mind to the parents they serve. They want the families they serve to know they are not alone. They are the film protagonists featured in Through the Night. Welcome, 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 Patrick and Dolores. How are you today? Please say hello.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Hello, everybody. Have a blessed day. We definitely happy to be here.
And hello as well. And I might be popping in and out, but we're glad to be here. And thanks everybody for hosting.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to have you here. So I just can't, okay, let's get into it. So for today's panel, really, it's just a reflection of what it's been like to be part of the film. We have filmmakers joining from all around the world. We've had over 100 join this event and they're popping in and out. So I really want to hold some space and to reflect on what this journey has been like for you from each of your vantage points. I want to start with Loida, the director producer of the film. What has been sort of your reflection of embarking on this film as an impact film? And then how has that evolved or changed? How do you think about film impact? Has that changed at all since this journey?
Okay, just needed to unmute. Reflection, I mean, you know, I hope this isn't too cliche, but I think everything that we accomplished as a team including people who are not here with us right now, who are part of our team, it exceeds like all of any expectations or hopes and dreams that I had for what the film could do in the world. And I think that's a result of the fact that we were really blessed to build a team of collaborators and partners that were just so aligned, and who were coming to this film and this campaign from a real kind of personal place. It felt like everybody that was on the team was doing this because it was like their heart's work. So I know that's like very non-tangible and inconcrete, but like it does really feel like it was a very magical alignment of people and energy and a lot of love and a lot of heart, that allowed us to exceed all of the different, sort of hopes and dreams that I had as we were making the film. There were things that I was hoping to achieve that were certainly in terms of like social change or, concrete material change, but also things that are a little more or less like tangible, that are about the experience, right, of people who see themselves in this film, experiencing their story on screen and within a framework that felt very loving and tender, and like the potential for healing and transformation that could come from that. So yeah, I think I'll stop there, but I'm in my feelings because I haven't seen Nunu and Patrick for a while. I haven't seen Annie for a while. So I'm starting from the place of feeling.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And like, that's also, I think, something that's good to remind filmmakers, like that feeling is what makes film special. It's what makes it different from a book. It's what makes it different from a policy paper. I like to say no one cries over a policy paper. A film is about how you experience the world, your personal story, your emotions, your feelings as you relate to yourself and others in the world. So that's what it's all about, really, the feelings. So 100%. I'd like to ask Diana your thoughts on how you reflect on film in general. You work with Moms Rising, you do so much other activism work as well with your podcast. What is your take on film as a tool for change, and how can filmmakers also partner effectively with you to help move you forward with your work?
Hi, everyone. So storytelling is really important in advocacy work. I actually started in advocacy, sharing my own story about like the lack of paid leave. So what I would love filmmakers to know is that taking a story and bringing it to the screen is so incredibly powerful. Because like Annie just said, no one's going to cry. Few people are going to cry if they read something, but if they see the images and they see the people and the human beings that are being impacted, that's super powerful. So I love the idea of having more of these stories on screen. I think it's something that we don't have enough of. I think it's really powerful in advocacy. I was part of a panel where we showed the film to New York State legislators when we were talking about childcare in New York State. And it's so powerful because it really humanizes the stories that we're talking about, right? So yeah, it's very, very powerful tool that I think we need more. We need to bring more of these stories, to the right people, the people that are making these choices. That sometimes I think that there's a disconnect, right? Sometimes I think people think, but why do we need so much money for X topic? This is why, Nunu and Patrick will explain why. Parents will explain why. The people that are affected every day will explain why. And I think that film is a great medium to do that. And also to bring about culture change, right? Because film can reach a lot of people. Sometimes it's hard to get people to read a 200-page book, but maybe you can get them to sit down for an hour and a half and really connect with the people they see on screen.
Absolutely. And I want to echo what you said about centering the people who are in the story. It is their story that I think a film like this elevates. So with that, Patrick and Dolores, please, we would love to hear from you. How has the film and being part of its impact in the world, how do you reflect on that? How has it impacted you? I can hear you now.
It impacted everything that had to do with daycare. It made, it brought daycare to the light, where at one time all we was just babysitters. It showed everything that we was doing when it comes to childcare and how important childcare is in the world, which it always have been important. It's just that we was so far, we was just considered as just people that watch your children and you pick them up and that's it. Lorna made sure that she showed every part of what we was doing. It's the love, it's the care, it's the nurturing, it's taking care of the parents too. It's and then showing also where we are doing so much because we are such a big part of what this world is all about, because if it wasn't for providers, parents couldn't go to work. Work wouldn't get done. It's also showed that the parents, what they deal with, 3 and 4 different jobs and trying to, take care of their children out of the little bit of money that they're making, how they're getting cut hours because they don't have to have, they don't want to give them health insurance and different, little crazy things like that. So she brought out so much to let people actually see what's going on in childcare, and not that, oh, well, these people, they're good people. I drop my children off and I pick them up, and that's it. Childcare is a very important part of everyone's life. Rather it's your mother giving childcare to you, rather it's a grandparent, rather it's a childcare program. It's a very important part of people's lives, because if you didn't have childcare, you wouldn't have no one to take care of your child while you at work. So then that means work wouldn't get done. And like I said, it really helped show what was going on with the parents, subsidies, how they, treating daycare and the parents and different things. So this film brought out a lot. I always said we was in a tunnel, like a train, a dark tunnel, and we never seen the light. Now we was in that tunnel and we coming straight to the light. I can actually see the light now.
I'm quite sure there has been other films and documentaries made about daycare. But thanks to LL, I think the best one was made by her and Filmlight Media, or Firelight Media. I can't think of which one it is now, but and it's the good thing. I think what also made it a definite impact with everyone around the United States. In fact, we're getting, I got an email, someone from Canada last week, from Quebec, Canada, with the Black Film Festival up there. And I think part of it is that it wasn't scripted. That they didn't come in and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do, this is how we're gonna do it. We didn't sit down with a storyboard or anything like that. It was be yourself, in any case, we're gonna be ourselves anyway. And what you got was what you got. This is, as I said before, what you see in the documentary is what we do every day. It wasn't a hype for the documentary. It's what we do every day with the kids, the love, the care, everything. The documentary portrayed that. They did a fantastic job in portraying daycare. the life and times of daycare, not only from the provider side, but from the family side as well. And the things that that we do and we go through. So kudos to LL. I always call her LL because I always forget how to say her name the right way anyway. And you know, Annie and Nicole and everybody else, you guys, it was fantastic.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I also want to just encourage, like, this is a conversation. We're friends here. You don't have to wait for me to ask a question. We can also dialogue. It's all good. But I do have some thoughts or reflections, and if you want to jump in with anything someone else says, please just go ahead and do so. I have a question for Diana, specifically about Through the Night. How can you share a bit about how Moms Rising and you and your work in the podcast utilized the film? How you use the story of the film and had Nunu and Patrick on the podcast, etc. Because filmmakers watching, it's sometimes nebulous. Like, what is a partner? What do they do? What is their goal in partnering with a film? So illuminate that a bit, perhaps.
Sure. So you approached me, we found the film. I can't remember how it happened, but we connected, and, you know, it happens to be that this film came out at the moment. I think, you know, things happen the way they're supposed to at a moment when everyone started talking about childcare, right? Because I have been a childcare advocate, I want to say, since 2018, 2019. I had started with paid leave, and I had moved on to childcare when paid leave passed in New York State. And, you know, so we've been talking about it, but we have been talking about it in this little group, you know, as sometimes things happen when there's no national attention to it. But what COVID did was COVID brought national attention to it. So when you, we're in this moment where childcare is all over the place, because now guess what? It's not only a woman's issue, right? Now it's everyone. Now it's doctors. Now it's firefighters. Now it's essential workers. Everyone is talking about it. So what the film has done is the stuff that kind of was on the sidelines. I think we were able to use the film, right, to have conversations with Dolores and Patrick, to have conversations with Loida about why she wanted to make the film. And she shared, you know, that she saw that what she saw in her experience was something that she had experienced when she was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Loida, but you shared that it was very personal for you, right? That these were stories that you identified with growing up. And it's certainly stories that I think so many of us identify with, stories that weren't being told. So the film, you know, we used it at Moms Rising. We used, you know, clips of, for example, the moms, because Loida did a great job of showing, like Patrick, I think, mentioned, showing both, you know, showing both sides, right? It's not only a film about the child care center, the 24-hour aspect of it. It's also showing who are the parents, because we often talk about childcare and we think 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 5. But, you know, there are people that work 24 hours a day, right? They're nurses and ER doctors and fire, like, who is taking care of these kids? And something we hadn't talked about. So we were able to use some of those clips. I know we used one, for example, of Marisol, who had an older child who was kind of being, I think, pushed, you know, like aging out of the childcare system, which is actually, as a parent, I have 2 kids. One is 10. And it's really hard to think that you're being told your child is too old to be taken care of. So, you know, those little stories, and Loida did a beautiful job. It was very nuanced. It was very heartfelt. You saw the connections, and, you know, childcare providers don't only take care of the kids, it's also family. I'm a parent and I lost my childcare provider. And for me, that was heartbreaking. So all of what Loida was able to put on screen was all of that, all of those nuances, all of the characters that sometimes we don't think about, right? We don't think about, how is a single mom figuring it out? How is a single mom accessing benefits? There's so many layers. And I think that Loida and her team did a great job of kind of putting that on screen and sharing those stories. And as a partner, Moms Rising, like I said, we love the film. We wanted to share it with all our members, but we were able to take clips and also, use it as a tool and say, this film, like, these are real stories, because that's what we always, when we talk to members of Congress and we talk to policymakers, we say, we can give you all the stats, we can give you all the petition signatures, we can write on a piece of paper and say, this mom in this state this is happening. But it's one thing for me to tell you that, and it's another thing for you to see Marisol and see that she has to have 3 jobs to make ends meet, and that some jobs don't offer benefits. And it's never only about childcare. And the film also shows that. And then I'll stop because I'm talking a lot, but it's also, you see how all these issues are interconnected. It's about the access to childcare. It's about aging out of childcare. It's about, working 3 jobs and not having health insurance, not having a job where you have the stability to be able to pick up your kids and have kind of a normal schedule, which a lot of times I think employers, take advantage of, right? It's people that have to work and they don't know what their next week's schedule is going to be, and they have to figure all that out. And so there's so many layers that I think the film did a great job of showing, which is why we need these stories on screen.
Yeah, I want to underline a few things that you've said. Educating legislators, you're showing them, right? Not telling them. That's powerful. Pulling clips from the film. You wrote an amazing blog post right before the theatrical run, and you sat on a panel, our New York theatrical promo panel for the impact screening right before the theatrical run, which had legislators on, and they were being educated through the film. That was a very powerful moment, I think, that you touched on. And another thing you said was serving as a tool. So in our first session, we talked about that. If you were here for that first session, that those things might ring a bell. A film is a tool that you are offering as a service, in service to the work of folks like Moms Rising and what you touched on, Diana. So thank you for sharing that. Yes, Loida, please, of course.
So I want to jump in and say something. I completely agree with everything that is said, but I want to also say, like, we're talking about legislators. Legislators are not my target audience when I was making the film, right? I figured that if I made a film for the people in the film and the people who see themselves in the story, and it could serve, really my main goal was to create something that felt like an offering, a love letter, something that could help displace the sort of shame and guilt that is placed on the shoulders of single mothers of color, displace that from their shoulders and put that back on to our very cruel and inhumane system in the United States. That probably was like my biggest goal. And when I was thinking about target audiences, I literally was really thinking about, well, how's Nunu gonna feel watching this? How's Shanona gonna feel? How is my mother gonna feel? How is my closest friend who is a nurse who worked the night shift raising her kid gonna feel? And so when people talk about how beautiful the film is or how tender and all of that, I really wanna stress that that is a result of who the target audience was, which I say to say that centering the people that your film is about as the audience for your film will always get you the best results. Because if you can reveal something to someone about their own experience, then it's going to be revelatory for everybody else, right? Like for everybody that has never heard about 24-hour daycare, that's a low bar, right? So like informing people is a low bar. And I don't mean to be like critical or judgmental, but if you can like shift these really deep-seated narratives and these ways in which, like I grew up in the South Bronx, and it's really common in low-income communities for us to buy into the idea that if you just work hard enough, you'll get ahead in the United States. And it's like, well, actually, like a lot of the people that I grew up with are like the hardest working people. Like you can't work any harder, right? You can't be any more smarter. You can't be any more deserving. And they still didn't necessarily make it ahead, right? And so it's like, can we chip away at these things that the dominant sort of society tells us that we then believe, that then if you like place that in the situation of someone like Marisol, who's working 3 jobs, she's like exhausted. There's always a gap between something. And then on top of that, she's guilty because people are guilting her about not being able to be, with her children more or whatever. And for me, I was like, this is all a mess. This is not ideal for anyone, but you, the individual person, the individual Black single mother, the individual Latina single mother is not to blame for this. So really at the core of it, I wanted to displace that blame and that guilt and the shame and say like the society should be ashamed, not the individual person, that comes from a community that I identify with. And then because I also think like social change, meaningful social change always is bottom up. It's never top down, right? And it has to be like the people that are most impacted by something pushing, the envelope. And if it is top down, it's not going to work. It's going to leave a lot of people out. It's going to leave people behind, right? And so that's why I say like, I'm thrilled that we were able to partner with Diana and Moms Rising and other national organizations and do screenings for legislators. I'm thrilled, that the bill passed in New York State, giving, what they're saying is like an unprecedented amount of money towards childcare, towards stabilizing childcare in the United States. I'm thrilled that all of that happened. That was not my starting point as a filmmaker. So I think it's important to hold the positions, right? And like what is your particular expertise? I felt like if I made a really good film that I could bring back to the people that the film is about, and it could do something for them and be meaningful for them, then you could take that same offering and put it in the hands of advocates and organizers and movement leaders and let them do their thing, right? You could put it in the hands of, all kinds of different partners. Like everybody has a position to play, and I think it's important for filmmakers to think about that, as they're developing their plans. And I just really can't stress enough centering the audience, particularly if you're talking about people of color or, disenfranchised, marginalized, oppressed, traditionally oppressed communities or historically oppressed communities. Don't start with like middle-class white people, mainstream. You want to educate the people in the middle somewhere as your audience. Like, I think you can generate a lot more impact if you think about the very same people that you're making the film about as you're making the film for them, and then let everything else, float from there.
Thank you.
I just wanted to stress that at Moms Rising, one of the things that we do say about childcare specifically is that, that's one of the things we always say, that if you're a parent that's struggling with childcare, it's not your fault. It's not because you don't work hard enough. It's not like these are structural, this is something that should have been taken care of, that as a community, we need to figure out. It's not because the single mom isn't working hard enough, right? It's not because members of the communities that Loida mentioned are not hardworking. It is because there's a system in place that, how are you working 2 jobs and, you know, you're making a minimum wage and you don't get access to healthcare? Like all these things that are kind of mind blowing. Those are the things that we always stress as well, because you know what, for parents, it can be hard to share their story because there is guilt, like Loida said. You know, I agree with everything that Loida said, especially the idea that the change comes from the bottom up. I think that the film was used to educate legislators because it was so beautifully done and because it centered those voices that a lot of times when you have a legislative body, the majority are white people who maybe, quite frankly, if I'm being blunt, don't know what it's like to live in the South Bronx, or, you know, have never met a person who have never really talked to and gotten to know a person who is the childcare provider. So I think that the film did a wonderful job of really centering those voices, but I completely agree that those are the voices that need to be centered, you know, in these conversations.
Absolutely. I want to touch on a couple of points that you all brought up. In our first session, we talked about vision and aligning your vision. Loida, that's what you were talking about now, thinking about how your vision is aligned with your impact and including your protagonists, having them be a partner with you in that vision. What are their hopes and dreams, and having that conversation. We talked about different types of protagonists, right? Each film is different. Maybe your protagonist is you and your family. That's a different approach. Maybe it's someone from a vulnerable community. Maybe it's someone who's an elected official and more powerful. So those all have different strategies, but regardless, our approach is the nothing about us without us approach. I encourage you to look up an article called Beyond Empathy by Sonia Childress, a mentor of mine and a dear friend to us here, to learn more about that. But we can also talk more about protagonist stewardship on the VIP day tomorrow. So remember to apply for your invitation to that and drop questions in the chat that you have for the panelists now. And I'll take them at the end. So that said, regarding protagonist stewardship, Patrick and Dolores, I would love to ask you about your experience in feeling cared for through this experience. You know, at what point, I remember we first met at Good Pitch in 2019. What was your experience like in understanding like what's going to happen with the film? Like, how is it going to affect my life? Like, what questions were you asking for yourself? Like, how did Loida help steward you through that process of the film's release?
Let me just say one thing. I want to show a picture of how the film impacted daycare and our lives all together. We had Kathy Hochul, and we had Andrew Stewart Cousins, the governor, and everybody in my front yard. I just want to show a picture. And we had the news and everything in my front yard where my children run around and play. And they came and they said they was gonna do this and they're gonna help with money for the parents, daycare, try to get the money for daycare and everything. She said how much she appreciate everything that we do, daycare providers do, what the parents are doing. She played with the children, very nice woman. I mean, down to earth, all of them, down to earth. They played with the children, they read stories to the children. I had so many heavy hitters in my yard that one day that never, ever thought to set foot in my front yard. So that's how the film impacted daycare and impacted us. I mean, I always tell Lorna, I go, every time I write to, I go, you know, this is like a dream. I never thought anything like this would ever happen to me. This is a dream. And I definitely appreciate everything that you've done to bring life to daycare, because that's what she did. She breathed life into daycare. Rather she knows that or not, she really did. She showed the world what providers and parents need, what they go through. I was at we're gonna do the Thanksgiving parade. And I called the lady that's the Chambers of Commerce, and she was like, okay, who am I talking to? I said, these Tots. She said, oh my God, the one that did the documentary? Yes, we're gonna put you at the top of the list. I was like, wow, like I never thought in a million years that, these Tots name will ring like that. I mean, we always had a good reputation, but Lorna just showed just how great people that work hard in daycare can be, because providers really work hard in their daycare. Parents really work hard, and they deserve good people taking care of their children. We don't want children just sitting around watching TV and different stuff. We want to teach them, train them, show them love when their parents are not here, show them the love that they need. Like parents are working 15, 17, 18 hours. When my children are here with me, I want them to know, no, I'm not mommy, but I am so close to mommy, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, my children love me the way, just as much as they love their mother. Not as great, but if mommy leaves them, they're good with it. They're okay. Some of the kids don't even want to go home. They cry not to, no, mommy, I'm not going home. I want to stay for a little while longer. But they've been here for 17 hours, like, no, I want to stay for a little while longer. Mothers have to pick them up. Mothers have to bribe them. They come in with milkshakes and different stuff to bribe them to leave the house. So the impact of this film was astronomical. I mean, there's no words that I can say how this film impacted the world. And I'm so grateful. I am really grateful. I am so grateful to you, Alana, your group, your crew, everybody, I really am. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. There were times where my team and I were like, we wish we were kids at these Tots. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want, go later, go ahead, please.
I was trying to unmute myself. Nuno and I, we do this every time we speak or we write each other. She's like, thank you, me. And I'm like, no, thank you. Thank you for opening the doors to your home and to this entire community. One thing I have to say is that people often ask me like how I approached earning the trust of Nuno and Patrick and the parents. And I say to them, like, it wasn't a super long process. I think we met initially, talked for a long time. And at the end of that conversation, Nuno was like, okay, I want to do this. And she also said, I want to do this for these reasons. So she was clear from the outset, what her goals were, right? One thing that I always recall is her talking about how important it was for her to show the world what her parents go through, what her mothers go through. Because people are so quick to judge, without ever having walked, even half a mile in somebody else's shoes. So she had really clear things, as did Patrick. One thing that hasn't come up here, but Nuno and Patrick are part of a union in New York State, which is one of like the first of its kind union of home-based childcare providers, which is like a whole, it's a distinction that is important. There's center-based care that kind of functions one way and receives resources one way. And then there's home-based childcare, which is what you see, what these Tots is, which is, care that is in these communities. So it's people from your own community, right, taking care of your children in your own community, which, to me just has a value that can't be overstated. But it's also not respected, the way that it should be. I think Patrick and Nuno have already said, it's like the kind of perception is that because it's happening in homes and oftentimes in our communities, it's like seen as glorified, babysitters or something, when, there's such a high level of expertise and specialization that goes into what what they're doing, and they need to be seen that way and compensated that way, you know, and respected accordingly. But anyway, all that to say, I think this connects to something you were saying earlier about protagonists and having your protagonist as your partners. Like, again, from the very first time that we met, you know, I tried to, in that first conversation, outline what could possibly come of a documentary. You know, I also tried to not make any promises because obviously these things are not in our control. All I remember saying was like, the film has to be really good. If like the film is not a good film, then no one's gonna watch it. No one's gonna write about it. We won't get any attention. So then we can't do any of the things that we all wanna do, right? But throughout, you know, from the beginning and throughout the campaign and not the campaign, production, we were constantly talking about like what was important to include, what some of the goals were, what, you know, in best case scenario, what kinds of things we wanted to center and frame. And so in our campaign, a lot of the goals and the framing were informed from all those conversations with Nunu and Patrick. You know, there wasn't just one conversation when the film was done. We were having the conversation, you know, all throughout the process, which for me really helped inform. I remember we were pretty far along in shooting, and I had a conversation with Nunu, and something had happened, and she was a bit frustrated around like people again not understanding exactly what they do. And I think maybe it was like somebody had made a comment or something, made some sort of assumption, Nunu, in your presence. And you talked about like, you know, we're doing all kinds of stuff here. We're teaching children, you know, the preschoolers, we're teaching them their ABCs, we're teaching them how to write their name. Like we're getting them ready, you know, for the next stage. The after school kids, we're doing like tutoring, homework support, you know, all of that. And it was like these kinds of ongoing conversations was like, we were pretty far into the process of shooting. And I realized we hadn't really captured a scene that depicted the academic piece clearly, right? And so I was like, we gotta shoot that, you know, we gotta get that in, because Nunu said, you know, so it's like that process, right, of understanding, you know, you as a filmmaker, you have your ideas, you have your dreams, your hopes, the things that interest you or that you might be slightly obsessed with, because as documentary filmmakers, we can be a little obsessive about things. But it needs to be, I think, you know, the best kinds of results are when you are in a constant conversation and collaboration about those very same things with your protagonists, you know?
And actually, off of that, we had a question in the chat of about exactly what you answered. And one specific piece, though, is like reviewing cuts. Was that part of the process of preparing them?
They didn't review full cuts. I shared some footage along the way to give a sense of like what kinds of things we were focusing on. And then they were supposed to watch a full-length cut the week that New York City shut down, which would have been ahead of us doing post-production and like really finalizing and getting ready. So that didn't happen. They ended up watching the film for the first time over Zoom. We watched it together over Zoom in the early weeks of the pandemic. So the pandemic disrupted, you know, what we had outlined as a process for them to see a cut prior to releasing the film.
And we didn't need to see a cut.
Right.
As I said, what was put on film is what we are. Is who we are. We didn't need to. We didn't need to see a cut. What was there is what was going to be there. And
I knew she would do the right thing anyway. And if I was looking at a cut, I wouldn't know what to put in the film. If it was up to me, everything would have been in the film. The film would have been 5 hours long.
with me as the star.
That's an interesting, you know, because I know like in the documentary field, there's these conversations, right, about like how to be accountable to your protagonist. And I think sometimes we end up with these kind of absolutes you know, in terms of like, you should do this. You know, in my case, I'll say part of the reason that I wasn't trying to show them cuts or a ton of stuff was because I was very well aware that for them and for everyone involved, even myself included, but really for them, time was their scarcest resource. So I was trying to be like as economical about what I asked of them, you know, and I really tried to have like the lightest footprint possible in the process, because I saw them. I saw how hard and how long everyone was working and how little sleep everyone was getting. And the days where I was shooting and I could tell that, you know, someone was really exhausted, I felt really conflicted and terrible about adding yet another thing, you know, to their plate, you know, even though obviously we had talked about it, they had agreed or whatever, but just, you know, I care about people, right? And I have formed relationships with all of them. So if I'm in Shanona's house and I can see that she's gotten 3 hours of sleep and she's trying her best, you know, to get through the interview, but I see, right, like that this is an added strain on her, I'm gonna feel that, right? And it mattered to me and I cared. And so I think it's great for us to have best practices, and they're very, very necessary, right? Given the power dynamics and power imbalances and some of the horror stories, frankly, right, that have happened in documentaries. But I also think like there's nuance to that. And I think the trick for me was, or not the trick, but like the thing that I kept coming back to guide decision making was like prioritizing my relationship with Nuno and Patrick over the shoot or over, you know, it's like that saying like prioritize relationship over task. You know, like I was trying to make sure that this was not a transactional experience for everyone. I wanted the experience of making the film to feel like good and respectful and caring and, you know, and thoughtful, like you do when you are in a relationship with someone that you care about, right? Whether it's a friend or a colleague or a romantic partner, it's just like bringing care to the work that you are doing, which is easy for me because I was making a film about people that I deeply admire, love, and respect, right? So I know that if you're making a film about, you know, some evil, whatever, dictator or something somewhere, like you're not gonna, it's a different, you know, situation. But for me, I was making a film about people that I deeply cared about, you know? So I sort of kept thinking like, prioritize relationship above all else.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. That echoes so much of what we were talking about this morning, of transformational over transactional impact and centering your vision, your protagonist. And we're also going to talk about this in the last session today too, what it means to be an impact filmmaker. I'd like to reflect in our last few moments a bit more concretely on kind of the mechanics of things too, particularly the beginning. How impact, like the formal parts of impact, I came on, you brought me on while you were still in production, before the film was complete. We had the brain trust, and of course the world, the story and environment, as we call it, shifted in March 2020. But how do you reflect on starting impact before the film is complete? How does that inform you? How did the brain trust ultimately impact the film?
There's construction happening here. Can you all hear that? Are you able to hear?
Every now and then, but we can hear you.
Okay. So, you know, like I said, I think impact, we weren't actively working on impact till, you know, later in the process. We were already in post when we got into Good Pitch, which was probably like when we first started to be more focused, you know, on impact and strategic, and starting to think about like what mattered to us, what our priorities were. But again, like I said, Nuno, Patrick, and I were having those conversations all throughout. Because for me, I wanted to be clear that they were clear on why they were participating in this crazy thing, like having cameras around, and like I wanted to know that they knew why they were doing this, and I wanted to know what their reasoning was for it to, again, inform what we shot, how we shot it, and when we shot it. So that we were thinking about it all along as we got ready, right, for the world premiere. We had planned the Brain Trust. We had to then shift because, again, the pandemic started. So I also say, like, our whole impact thing is, like, I think a real, it's like a time capsule of, like, when things were the most upside down for the film industry. Because I think now things have, like, sort of stabilized, 20 months, almost 2 years later, people have figured out what they're doing, right? This is like the second round of festivals or the second round of whatever. But we came out as this thing turned everything upside down, which was very disheartening in a lot of ways, because it meant we couldn't be together. And at the same time, I think it was, I leaned into, like, faith and surrender, like I had to do in my house to just get by with my kids. I was like, all right, nobody knows what's going on. We're just gonna, follow, like, purpose and faith and heart and see where that takes us. So that was very liberating in some ways as well, So we had our Brain Trust, which I took, like, a lot of affirmation away from what came out of the Brain Trust, and in terms of it being, like, the first group of people not connected to the film to see anything of the film, not connected to the film, but connected to the issues. That a lot of the things that we were hoping the film would do were resonating, and that there was excitement and a desire to work with the film and to be in collaboration. So I took that away, from the Brain Trust. And then, I also want to say that since we're talking about nuts and bolts, I think sometimes, I'm not sure, the others, I haven't been in the other sessions, so I'm not sure, like, what the breadth of how impact is being defined in this space is. But I think I often see filmmakers and folks have a conversation about impact that is a little too limited, and it doesn't always account for the very critical role of press and publicity, of film festivals, of social media strategy. Like, there are these elements that are not necessarily directly about working with, organizers or advocates on the issue, but you need those other things in order to raise the film, raise the issues, raise the protagonists, right? And that these things there's this synergy that happens, right? Like, you need the legitimacy of actual organizations working on issues, and you need to get the film in front of the communities that they serve, which in our case were the communities that the film is about. But you then also need the reviews, right? Because sometimes the review actually helps you to get a partner on board. They might not pay attention to your email if they haven't seen that it got, a review on whatever newspaper. You need social media because there's some people in your community that you want to reach that are not connected to an organization, right? And so there's another space, another way to build community online, and then those things kind of scaffold, and you leverage one off of the other, and the festivals are part of that as well. It's like, that's where you reach the film industry, people that validate the film, that make people be like, oh, I should watch it, because maybe I should review it, or, whatever, that there's this symbiotic sort of relationship that happens. And in our case, because everything was so topsy-turvy and, just really chaotic and uncertain, I feel like we were constantly doing that and being really strategic about what is needed right now. It's like, one of the earliest things that we did was, that generated a lot of impact, I would say. We did a fundraiser, really early, like, in the film's life, we launched a GoFundMe because Nunu and Patrick said, a lot of our peers are closing. People can't keep the lights on. People are, whatever. People are helping families pay for rent so they don't get evicted, or there were just like all these gaps and holes. And we were like, all right, well, I think at that point we had like a Hollywood Reporter review, which gave us a little bit of a platform. We had the fact that we were like a Tribeca world premiere, which was like another little piece of a platform. And then, we were like, and then Shana brought in some like social media kind of influencers and partners. We partnered early with Color of Change and the NAP ministry. Then we had the partners that we, had engaged in the Brain Trust and did, some activations online that I think built enough buzz around the GoFundMe to lead to our first real kind of concrete impact, which was like the over $80,000 that we raised for childcare providers in New York State. That then Nunu and Patrick and Marisol and others in their community formed a committee to figure out like the criteria, eligibility, and how to get that money out the door quickly, So I feel like we did that. It wasn't planned, but it was like we were responding to the need right that in this moment. Because again, we were coming out in such a wild moment. And I think that for me crystallized how you kind of need all these different moving pieces in order to make real impact,
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And something we touched on in the last session was about aligning your distribution with impact. So our conversation now is about Through the Night that had an entire rollout team. So think about that whole team. And we can dig into that also tomorrow at the VIP day. So make sure to get your invitation for that. Our next panel will be about filmmakers who did not have that rollout team and how they still brought their film into the world with just them. So that's also possible too, and got publicity and got support. I know we are in our last few minutes. So want to just give you all the opportunity to share any last reflections on the film impact, what you're feeling and thinking right now.
I really would like to say to all of the people that watch the film, that well wishes and how much they love the film. I try to write everybody back, and anybody that says anything, I try to make sure I get back in touch with them. I just want to say to them, thank you very much. We appreciate everything, and everybody need a pick-me-up every day, because the way the world is, you wake up in the morning with gloom and doom, but you have somebody that might call and say, oh, we love you, we praying for you. That is such a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. And I appreciate your prayers. I appreciate when you write me and say things and tell me that, we're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. I want to thank you all. If I didn't get back in touch with you, but I really tried to get back in touch with everybody, I just want to thank you all for that. And I would like for the providers, the parents, and everybody, you guys need to continue to write to Kathy Hochul and all of them for the money and stuff that daycare need, that the parents need. They need to put this money into daycare and stop nickel and dime daycare, because you nickel and dime daycare, you nickel and dime the children. So we need to keep these guys that came in my yard on their toes. But thank you, God.
I'm sorry, I've been in and out, so doing things. So I leave it up to her.
I'm the boss anyway.
Yeah. She's the boss anyway.
Diana, oh, go ahead, Patrick, were you gonna say something?
No, I think that was it.
I just wanted to say that I had the pleasure of meeting everyone on the screen in person, and I felt like I was meeting celebrities. I was so excited. It was such a delight, and thank you for what you said. Yes, if you're nickel and dime providers, you're nickel and diming our kids. I think as a parent, it's really important for me to make sure that the people that are taking care of my kids are able to take care of their families. And I always say this when I'm on a panel, it's also really important for them to take care of themselves. Like if they're sick, they shouldn't have to go to work. They should be able to take care of themselves, which is something we didn't even touch on, but something that the film also highlighted. So because, you know, providers are partners in us raising our kids. That's my spiel as a mom who cares deeply about all the people that are doing this kind of work, especially because they're women, they're immigrant women, they're women of color. Every single person that has ever taken care of my child has fit that criteria. And, you know, they need to be able to make a living wage and have access to healthcare and all the things that allow themselves to take care of themselves and their own families. But for the filmmakers that are listening, please keep telling these important stories and center the people that need to be centered. Yeah, it's been a great journey for me as a person, as a parent, as a Latina, to be part of all of this as an advocate. So thank you for making the film, for being part of the film, for bringing me as a partner. And I will stop talking now.
Thank you so much, Diane. Loida.
Yes. Oh my God, I have so much to say. I'll be concise. I think I want to underscore to the filmmakers especially if you are making films about folks that have been historically marginalized, that to lead with love and care and transparency and accountability, and to really see the film's protagonists as their partners. And that's not something to be scared of. That's something that's only going to make your work stronger, and it's going to make you a better human being, a better person. In my case, I feel like, you know, this process has helped me be a better parent and a better daughter. It definitely transformed me a few times over to be, you know, in community with Nono and Patrick and the mothers, the daycare and the children, and to be in the space where care is like really multi-directional. You know, like I think you see in the film, from the littlest one, the little ones are taking care of the bigger ones are taking care of the little ones, you know, Nunu's taking care of the moms are taking care, and like everybody's taking care of each other. And I think, you know, more generally beyond the filmmaker statement, I think in this moment where we're in whatever limbo we're in, you know, pandemic limbo and racial reckoning limbos and whatever, who knows what state what phase we're in or what stage we're in anymore. I feel like Nunu and Patrick and their family, because we spoke to something we haven't said, but you know, that their daughters, you know, children that they've cared for who come back, like it's really a family enterprise. That to me, they are the living example that care is possible, that providing a safety net to working families is actually possible. And I say that because they have been doing it literally, like not because of the government, not because of social norms, in spite of the government and in spite of the social norms. They are a literal safety net for working families, you know, helping people they stand in all of the gaps, right? And they have been doing it for over 2 decades. And so, you know, it's like, yes, they are amazing childcare providers, but I see them like as so much more than that. They're the model, you know, I feel like hopefully they can help us, their model and their living example to us can help us all be more radical in the things that we demand and the things that when we envision when we think of a better world, you know.
Thank you
That's
so
it. That's my spiel.
Thank you so much. In closing, I want to invite everyone to thank our panelists for joining us today, for holding this space, for the work they do every single day as filmmakers, as advocates, as care providers. Please give them a round of applause and thank them in the chat. As I also want to as I shout out other folks who are part of this, I want to shout out my team, Suzette, Catherine, who are here today in the background, Tony, Lani, also Nicole Dacta, who I tried to get on this panel, but she is really behind the scenes. She's not doing it. Who's co-producer, Little Big Girl, Chana Ewing led that. She did social media, High End. They're doing social media now, led by Frankie. Aaron Owens, who led the theatrical, all the publicists and the publicists, oh my, yes, that whole group of publicists, the POV team, festivals, the partners, and all of the supporters. It takes a team to release your film in the world, just like it takes a team to create your film. So we'll talk more deeply about that. We'll have a little Q&A after this as well. But again, please join me in thanking our panelists for their amazing work each day. And I hope that this has been as helpful to you and loving to you as it has been for us to listen to your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
If I may just say one thing, and
Yes.
I only say it because, people find out, they're going to say, "Why I didn't say anything." Dolores' mother never seen the film because she had passed several years ago. My mother never seen the film because of dementia, and my mother just passed this Sunday. She transitioned, but definitely because of our mothers, we are who we are, and definitely fathers, you guys still make sure you still step up. But definitely mothers, we for all the mothers around the world, we definitely thank you because you go through a lot, but keep on staying in because not to say we're the greatest, but your kids can turn out to have L&L in your living room and house shooting your documentary one day as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick, we hold your mother in our hearts and want to extend our absolute deepest condolences and just hold space for you right now. Thank you for being here, for joining us, for everything that you do.
Thank you, guys.
Sending
Love you,
you so
Patrick.
much love. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that and for bringing her into the conversation. I feel like now I can feel her presence here, watching you do your thing.
Yeah, she would have yelled at you anyway. Would have yelled at you.
I ran over you with our wheelchair.
She's so like my grandmother. That was my grandmother's MO.
And we got into, we talked about it on the film. I was doing childcare. Well, actually back then it was babysitting. And her mother as well. So that's where, my brother and I started. Basically, we were taking care of children in the projects because that's what my mother did. So that's where it starts from.
We are so grateful to you and send you so much love, so much love. Thank you for everything that you do.
Patrick, she did a great job. Because
did.
one of the things the film shows us is men as caregivers, which we didn't even talk about because there's not enough time. But I loved seeing you interact with Dolores and you taking care of kids, which a lot of times we don't talk about. So that was also a beautiful part of the film.
Well, the kids was real. She made you to say the night about her because
Oh my God, here we go again.
L, when the film wasn't running, here we go. I was always happy. I was able to eat. I was able to get out. I tried to slip you a note every once in a while.
Here we go.
I didn't know what side of the fence you were on, so y'all have built up such a relationship.
He was such a prisoner.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Truth be told, it was rough.
Oh,
You guys.
That's something though that everyone always does comment on. It's like how some people say it's refreshing, other people say it's like healing, other people say it was just eye-opening. I've heard so many things, but like people always comment on how impactful it is for them to see you being all that you are, in your relationship with Nunu as a father, as a caregiver, you know, at these times. Like I always get comments about that. So your mother truly, I want to just echo Diana and say she did such an amazing job.
Well, that's why I married him. I watched him. I had to keep my eye on him to see what kind of person he was. And then I said, oh, he'll be a great father. So you're going to marry me, whether you like it or not.
That's in the film. So please go watch it if you have not seen it. And I don't want to keep you all. I know we could go like this all day, but please, again, send love to Patrick, to Dolores. Thank our panelists for everything they do. Thank you so, so much, Diana, Patrick, Dolores, Loida. And if you'd like come on video and just give them a round of applause, jazz hands, just like so much love to you all. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank you, Annie, for today, for this conversation, but also for joining, you know, this journey with us and just putting all of yourself into it. Thank you so much. You were an invaluable collaborator. I'm so thankful to you. And being able to meet your mom at the party, you know, Rebecca, was like a huge highlight. It felt like such a fitting way to close things out. You know, again, back to the mothers, right? Our mothers, the reason for it all, you know, and to be able to honor them with this work is truly a blessing. So thank you for everything.
Thank you. My honor. I have the poster here that you all signed. It's right here. Every day, y'all. I'm like, this is what's up. All right. Well, I've kept you a little long. We're gonna I'm gonna do some quick Q&A, but you are welcome to stay or go on with your day. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And again, I appreciate you and all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, be well.
Take
You have to go back and get the baby. So thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Love y'all.
Awesome, all right. All right, who do we have? Show me, are you in the chat? Give me a thumbs up. Give me a 1. Was that, did that resonate? Was that helpful? My goodness, like, I just need to sit in my feelings for a second. Just take a deep breath. Had not seen them in a hot minute. Thank you for the pluses. Jacqueline, Beth, Jennifer, Emily, thank you. Oh, these Zoom things, my goodness. It's like I want to just be with you all in person. We'll have hopefully a future in-person conference. We'll see. Okay, let me just gather myself and see some of the questions that you put in the chat. Whew, before I jump into that, I want to just emphasize some of the moments that resonated. And please, actually, what are your moments that resonated? What resonated with you? What was surprising? What was impactful? What was an aha moment? For me, it was about, it just echoed so much of what we talked about this morning with your vision and being aligned, with centering your filmmaker and your protagonist in your strategy. And so many elements about when to start filming, how to involve them in the filmmaking process, and all of the dimensions of rolling out a film, right? After it's done, it's like just the beginning, at least for me, it's my favorite part, clearly. So wanted to just emphasize that. So please keep sharing your own aha moments, your own reflections as I get into a little bit of question. We have about 15, 20 minutes for question. I did peek at the questions as they were coming in and ask the ones that I couldn't answer that were specific to them. So the rest are ones that I think I should be able to answer. So the first question is from Moni. What aspects of the impact campaign had the most meaningful effect in the process? So I think, Moni, if you're here with us, please clarify in in the chat. I want to make sure I understand your question clearly. So the impact, it's kind of like what parts of the impact campaign were most impactful. That is what I read your question as. And oh, great, yes, thanks. So I think that it sort of depends, right? You saw Loida talk about many elements and how to use those different elements to move forward with how to leverage one another, right? Aligning distribution, but also any other elements you have working in your favor, like press, publicity, your social media. We talked about that a little bit. For this particular film, right? And remember, every film is different. You have a different mix of ingredients. You have a different set of resources available to you. At our next panel, we're going to look at filmmakers who really ran their own campaigns. So with Through the Night, the Brain Trust really planted the seed of partnerships that went on for years and are still being central to the film and how it's being used in the world. So building that momentum, that kind of like that graph I talked about, the advanced training tomorrow really goes into that. So make sure to get your invitation for that and tell us about your film. That plants the seed that enables momentum. You also saw Loida reflect on the fundraiser. So the film came out at a time, it was supposed to premiere at Tribeca the week of the pandemic and lockdown, and we were planning a brain trust for folks to fly into New York. I'm here talking to people all over the country, like, hold your ticket, wait a second. And then it finally hit. And we had to change and shift. And that's what Loida was talking about previously in the fundraiser, that was one of the activities that was pivoted to. And that was really a social media driven event. Chana Hewing's team at Little Big Girl ran with some of the messages that came out of the Brain Trust that created that event. So really, it's building each impact event, each moment the film has on itself over and over. So next question, Jennifer. Oh, we answered that about how Patrick and Nunu were involved. May, you asked who screens your film in the community besides the activism contingent? Okay, so this is really a question about your ideal audience, your impact audience. There's impact audience that maybe is more geared towards activism, and activism meaning taking a message into the world to decision makers. That's somewhat a very like back of the envelope way of conceptualizing that. But in the case with Through the Night, it was really, what was really central are those experiencing the story, seeing their story and their life reflected in the film. We had so many screenings with childcare providers, so many screenings with mothers, with women of color, all reflected in the film, and that ignited them. We worked actually with some organizations that have members that aren't seeing their story as a tool for change. They would watch the film, and then the action around that was to share their own story and be involved with decision makers, and that ignited them to become more active. So that was certainly part of what happened, and part of Loida's strategy in Through the Night was a bottom-up. That's a bottom-up strategy. So there are many other ways of approaching a strategy for impact for a film. That was this. And as she mentioned, the original intent wasn't activism. It was really that recognition of one story in the film. So keep coming with more questions. Next, Fran, have you had the opportunity to share method and love and the film with other daycare center folks to build a professional network as another way to share their story. You're both amazing educators that others can learn from. Okay, the film was shared extensively with so many daycare centers and continues to be. This film had so many screening requests. So yes, that is absolutely happening. And Dolores and Patrick are part of a union. It's their professional network of providers. So next question, Linda, was the Brain Trust beyond New York State organizations? Yes, it was national, because this campaign, the campaign for Through the Night, was national. So you want to think about the geographic scope. Is there geographic scope to your film? Where is it being filmed? We worked with one film that was very focused on Texas tour. What's happening in Texas? Who are decision makers in Texas? That would have more people from Texas. So think about your film. Does it have geographic specificity? And is that relevant to thinking about your film? This is not the case. This was a national film, so we wanted national perspectives. Moni, next question. How much does this type of impact campaign cost? This is in the 5-6 figures. This is a very, this is kind of we have a package called Complete Campaign. This was that within that package of years worth of work, many activations, many events, impact events. And you heard the entire team, a huge team. Not every filmmaker, of course, has the resources to fund a campaign like this. However, Guided Campaign takes everything we do and shows you how to do it. And it is just a microcosm of a budget. So if you want to learn more about that, definitely get your invitation to tomorrow's event, and we can talk extensively about that, extensively about our services. Catherine, if you could just drop the link in the chat in case anyone needs it. Thank you. Read my mind. All right. Jessica, next question. I will sign up, but will tomorrow's session be recorded too? Yes, it will. You will get a replay of tomorrow's session. Okay, next, Beth. Was it a group discussion? I'm going to reread this. Beth asks, was it a group discussion who was targeted for the Brain Trust VIP screening, i.e. you with the production team? Oh, okay. So Beth, I think your question, if you're here, give me a 1 if this is correct. Your question is, how did you decide who was going to attend the Brain Trust? I think that's your question. So there's a whole process for that, for how to prioritize. Okay, great, thanks. Yes, there's a whole process on how to prioritize which partners to pitch, which to bring to a Brain Trust, which to bring to an event, who to connect with. You really only need a few. You need like a dozen who are like the most connected, and they will get to everyone else. So you don't have to pitch hundreds and hundreds of people. You just need a few, and you make a list based on the goals that you have for the film, for its impact. So the conversation was really with Loida and the producer at the time, Jamaica, who I also want to shout out, Jamaica. The three of us, that was the whole team at that point when it was in post, and some folks on my team sat and I really guided Loida through prompts. What is your dream for impact? Who do you ideally want to get to? And she would communicate that, and I would discuss, okay, it sounds like this type of person, it sounds like this type of person, it sounds like this organization. Is that right? Does that seem like what would resonate with you? Who is your reach? Like big dream, give me big dream. So through that, I had a good sense of kind of what are the categories of people that turn into, as you would expect from the conversation we just had, caregivers, right? Women of color. It was really people changing the narrative around motherhood and mothering and using mothering as a verb. That last one is very nuanced, right? That is something in the core of the vision of the film. Loida's intent is about changing narratives around mothering. I am not a caregiver in that way, so that is not something I related to and came from the filmmaker. So it's a conversation, but once you have at least those kind of types of people, those groups, then you can start doing some research around who's out there that fits, and then prioritize. Again, it's not like you do not reach out to dozens, hundreds of people. It's like 30 max. And with Guided Campaign, would give you everything you need to do that. Our pitches are the database, all those things. But what I want to emphasize is that it comes from the filmmaker. Okay, and I told this to Loida early on, and it was a mom like, oh, okay, and this might be helpful, but you're the director of the film, but you're also the director of the impact campaign. Okay, we're going to get into this very extensively in the 4th session after our next panel. So we had one more question come in from Rennie. How do you best measure, track the impact of a campaign? That's a big question. Okay, so depending on the type of impact you're trying to have, each of those types have a different way of measuring them. I'm going to just talk about one type to illustrate my point. If your campaign's goal, or the type of goal, is to build community, then you create goals around building community and set targets that you break down given your distribution, your resources, the scope of what you're trying to get after, right? One state in the US versus the whole country, those are different scopes. Then you scope out those goals based on, you scope out those targets based on the scope that you anticipate, and then you track that along the way. So if it's nationally, let's say you want to get to 40 organizations over the period of 6 months using your film, then you track that. And you collect both qualitative and quantitative data around that. At tomorrow's VIP bonus day, you will get a pre-recorded training that breaks down goals for some campaigns and shows you how we break down goals into tiers. So if you want that advanced training, tell us about your film to get the invitation and go deeper into that. So that brings us to time for this session. We're right on time, I can't even believe it. And that said, we will wrap up now and see you for the next